Hello Flosstube friends, my name is Audrey Marine. You are very welcome to my channel. This is a channel all about cross stitch, and today I have a special video for you. It is not a regular Flosstube episode, nor is it like any of the other Flosstube extras I have done in the past. This video is all about my 2025 Hands Across the Sea samplers finishes. I have finished 25 hats pieces this year and I wanted to highlight them. I am going to show them to you one by one in the order in which I completed them. I'll tell you the name of the chart and a little bit about the materials that I used before moving on to the next one. I don't want this to be a super long video, but I feel like this is a great accomplishment. I set out at the beginning of the year, had an idea in my mind that maybe I could finish more hats charts than anybody else. And then once I got to about the midway point of the year, I realized actually I was on track to do just that. So I thought, we'll see in a couple days time when Nicola releases her end of year video. This is Nicola Parkman of Hands Across the Sea Samplers. When she releases her end of year video in which she reveals, which of the hats fans has completed the most hats pieces within the year. So let's go ahead and get started. As I say, I'll give you a little bit of information about each piece. If you have any questions, you can leave them below or find me on Instagram at Stitch Stitch Bead. But if you've been watching here for a while, then you will have already seen these. And if you ever go back and watch older Flosstube episodes, there will be information on the various pieces shown in each episode in the description box below. I spend some time putting information in there for you guys so you have it. All right, my first hats finish of 2025, I should say, was the piece that I chose to be my blessing sampler. Now, I have talked a little bit about the blessing sampler idea on previous episodes, and I know there's more and more of it going around on social media. So just to clarify, a blessing sampler isn't any one specific sampler that is chosen by a group or a designer or anything. It's just something that you as an individual might choose to start and complete within the month of January. Supposedly it brings you some good luck to your stitching. But really, I think whether it's really bringing you good luck or not, it's just a fun challenge. Pick something new and exciting to you. Pick something that you've had in your stash for a while, whatever it may be, but just pick something that you think that you can finish within the month. Some people do choose larger pieces. They want a bit more of a challenge, but I decided to go with this. Nicola released this late 2024 so that people would have this as an option. Now this is Ann Groom, 1876. I stitched this on 56 count white mustard by XG Designs. It is a very, very pale yellow linen, and I chose it because I wanted to emphasize the yellow stitches within this piece. I used all the called for colors in 100.3 silks. And going through all these finishes, you will see just a couple pieces that are not ready for display. The stitching is done, but there hasn't been any work done to make them into displayable pieces. Everything else is either a pillow finish like the one that you just saw. Those were all finished by Faye Rigsby. You can find her on Instagram, and I will leave her handle here. And then the other pieces that have been fully finished are framed, and those are framed by Lisa Manton of LM Framing, and I will leave her website below. You can contact her, and she's been great to work with. They both have been great to work with, and I have been very happy with all of the finishing. So second piece to be finished here, second piece that I stitched, this is Elizabeth Dinsdale, but this is the primer. Within the Elizabeth Dinsdale booklet, there are two pieces. There is a larger sampler, and then as a bonus chart, this small primer was included. Now this is stitched on a piece of 56 count, I believe XG linen. I looked through my notes, old Instagram posts. I even checked my old videos in which I showed this, and I cannot determine what the linen is, and for some reason I can't remember what it is. To me, I'm pretty sure it's an XJU, and I would guess that it's light hazelnut, something like that. It's a nice soft tan color. And as I say, this is a 56 count. I use the called for 103s, and then down here on the 4-sided stitch, that little blue row that you see, that is actually a row of 4-sided stitches. I talked about this previously, but if I were to do this again, I would stitch that row of 4-sided stitch in soie surfine rather than 103s, so that there's more definition to the squares and they kind of pop more, because now it's just kind of a blurred row, but the color is nice. I think the overall color palette is really nice on that piece. Okay, moving on. The third finish, my third hats finish of this year, is Elizabeth Hibbert. This is such a beautiful, colorful little marking sampler. It was kind of slow going because of all the color changes, but the finish is really beautiful and I love the effect. And I love the combination of backing fabric and trim that Faye chose for this piece. Now this piece is not widely available. It was part of the Words of Wisdom red box, and it is exclusive to that box. It will not be released. Ann Groom is available, and then Elizabeth Dinsdale. As I say, this was part of another booklet that had a larger sampler. I finished the larger sampler and I will show you that as well. That booklet was released at the end of 2024 as the anniversary booklet for Hands Across the Sea samplers. A lot of what I will show you is from charts that are available for purchase, but some of them are not. So if you find something in here that you like, I would suggest joining a couple of Facebook groups. There are quite a few of them, but you might be able to reach out to other friends, let them know that you're looking for something in particular, and you might be able to either purchase it from someone or at least borrow it for a time. My fourth finish is Fanny Wilson. This was another piece, another really small piece. This is from the Words of Wisdom box as well, so not available for purchase. This was one that I had considered while I was stitching it, having made into a pillow, but I loved the finish and I loved the quote here, "Truth and sincerity are the foundation of all happiness," and I loved that, so I thought she deserves a frame. Her two silly little dogs there, her name over one. I just really like this piece. This is on 56 count Spindrift by Cedar River Linen. And Cedar River has a bunch of wonderful colors. You should definitely check her out. I will link Cedar River's online shop below, but you can also get Jody's fabrics at several needle workshops. And again, I used all the called for, but I am positive I would have used, because it's on 56 count, I would have used a soie surfine, which is just an ultra fine silk for that over one lettering. I really enjoy stitching over one letters. I stitched Maria Ward, and that has the Lord's Prayer all over one, and it was a very enjoyable experience actually, and I love the finish on it. Maria Ward, I think to this day, is still my favorite piece that I've ever finished, and I have finished a lot. My fifth finish is the Rose and the Giant Pear. I stitched this on 56 count Creme Brûlée by Tabby Cat linens. I used a soie surfine conversion that was done by the Attic. A friend of mine gave me the fabric and the soie surfine, and when I stitched this the first time, because this is my second finish of the Rose and the Giant Pear, when I stitched this the first time, I was unfamiliar with the numbering system that Auvera Soie uses for soie surfine, and I didn't realize that you just slap a 2 onto a number and that would be the soie surfine number if there were a soie surfine in that particular color. So I remember having quite a time trying to figure out which soie surfine went for which called for 103, and then finally I noticed the pattern. It was like, a lot of these numbers have the same last 3 digits, just with the 2 on the front. So I say this to you because while this finish looks just as it should, there are a few 103s that are called for in this piece that I don't believe have perfect soie surfine equivalents. So you would need to use, if you're going to use soie surfine, you would need to use something close. But it's still one of my favorite pieces. And yes, I have stitched it twice and I kind of want to stitch it again. And you don't have to use soie surfine on 56 count. You'll notice a lot of these, I've used soie surfine maybe for over 1, or in the case of the Rose and the Giant Pear, I did use it for the entirety of the piece. But I do actually really like using 100.3 silks on 56 count. I like the boldness of the stitches with that combination. I know that there are plenty of stitchers who like to stick to certain rules. You know, this silk weight goes with this particular type of fabric, so on and so forth. But I really think that if you are getting results that you like and you enjoy the process, then you don't necessarily need to stick to any rules. Because I remember, it's probably, well, several months ago at this point, it may have even been over a year ago or something, but there was a woman in one of the stitchy Facebook groups that I belong to, and she was talking about how she didn't know any better, so she stitched a Bristol on 56 count using soie d'Alger. And everybody in the comments section was like, how did you do it? But she did it and she loved it and she had a great finished product, so what does it matter? I don't think I would go that far, but I also know that there are stitchers out there who think that you need to use soie d'Alger only on 37 count or lower. I don't agree with that. And I know there's another stitcher, Katie Strachan, who likes using soie surfine on 30-something counts. She likes it. She likes the lacy look, and a lot of people do. So if you are happy with the results that you're getting, continue to do what you're doing. But if you want to kind of deviate a little bit from your norm, that's okay too. You might find a combination that you really like that is unexpected. My 6th finish is Susanna de Carle. Now this was given to the attendees of the 2025 Sampler Symposium that was held at the Attic January of this year. And I knew a few people who went, and one of them gave me her copy of this chart, and I love it. I stitched Susanna on 56 count Spindrift by Cedar River, and I used both 103 for the over 2 stitches, and then I used the soie surfine for the over 1 stitches. And I remember when I was stitching this, I saved Susanna's name for the very end because I knew that was going to be the most fun for me, and it totally was. I loved stitching her teeny tiny name. And again, Faye Rigsby did the finishing for me. I absolutely love it. Yeah. My seventh finish. Now this is Neeltje Cornelia Van Buren. This piece was included in the 2024 Hobby House Holiday Mystery Box. I ordered that box when it was made available, and you were able to select your preferred linen count. I chose 56, and with the 56 count linen, which was 56 count Mason linen in antique button light. Because I chose 56, they sent me soie surfine with the piece, and that was fine. I just used that. I wouldn't normally use soie surfine for an entire piece, a large piece, but I thought with a whole spool of soie surfine, I don't really need to save it, right? It's a lot of thread that's on one spool of soie surfine. Eyelets down here. I really like stitching eyelets, so that was fun. And then right here in the middle, you'll see my signature. It's a lion with an A over a 25. Of course, I changed that depending on the year. The lion is an image that I got off of an antique sampler that I saw on eBay and did not buy. It was There were 2 of them, clearly stitched by sisters, and I think I might still have the photos on my phone that I saved, but maybe I finally deleted them. I don't remember, but there's a small, I have a little bit of hope that perhaps it was Nicola that bought those two samplers off of eBay, but if not, oh well. I stole the lion. I liked it. The photos on that listing were so clear, I was able to zoom in and really count the stitches, and I just liked the lion. I thought it would make a great little signature, and so I put at least an A and then the last 2 digits of the year on each piece that will be framed, but if there's room, if it makes sense, I add the line as well. So that is Ms. Van Beern. And as I say, I stitched that in soie surfine, and the included soie surfine was 2681. So as we were talking about surfine numbers and 103 numbers, 2681 is the soie surfine equivalent to 681 in 103s. So easy way to convert that. And there are more 103 colors than there are surfine. My 8th finish is Mrs. Salmond. This is from another red box, and let's see, I have All Things Bright and Beautiful and Words of Wisdom. This is from Words of Wisdom, and I stitched this on 56 count Regency linen by Seraphim. It has a bluish tint to it. I know that when I ordered it, I was expecting a different color. I think I was just expecting a gray or something, and this blue fabric showed up, and it's beautiful, but it wasn't what I expected. But this is the called for thread color. I thought it would look beautiful on this bluish linen, and it absolutely does. And I love the finish. Faye included a little clock charm here. I just love that. These pillows sit in a cabinet that I have here in my Floss Palace, and I get to look at them, and then they stay protected from, you know, dust and hair and stuff. Very nicely on display with some other treasures up there, other things that I've made, and some other purchases that I've made, but also some things from friends. So it's a really nice little collection there in that cabinet. My 9th finish was Eliza Duff curtain. This was a chart that I purchased at Hobby House last fall of 2024, and I've talked about this before. I was kind of on the fence about this chart, but I thought, well, what the heck, I'll just get it anyway. And I'm so glad that I did, because I absolutely love it. This is one of my favorites. It's a Scottish sampler, and I love the frame that I was able to get to go with this piece. I think it's absolutely perfect. I love this frame anyway, and I think I'm going to be requesting it more in the future. I don't want all of my frames to be the same, but when you find something that's really beautiful, I think it's okay to get it a few times. And this one I used the called for 103s again. It has some eyelets, and then it has a single bullion knot for the door knocker. And then here, I happen to have soie surfine in this same lavender color, and I was able to put a 25 up there in the corner, and it blends in. You don't even notice it. It's great. On the Van Buren piece, my signature is right in the middle, and I don't really care for how it jumps out, but because I included the lion, which is a little tricky to stitch over one, I decided to just leave it. But I actually prefer when my signature on these framed pieces just blends in. And that piece is now widely available. I think you can get it from Hobby House. I don't know if you can get it from any other shops right now, but I'm pretty sure that you can purchase it from Hobby House. My 10th finish is Kathleen Dempsey. This is another one that Hobby House has available. And this was really quick to stitch. I mean, it took hardly any time really. And I love the trim that Faye selected to finish this off. I think it pulls out those colors, the red and the teal, very nicely. I stitched this on 56 count Mason linen, antique button light. And I should tell you that Eliza Duff curtain, I use the called for fabric, which is also a Mason linen. It is antique button medium dark. So with Mason linens, they have just a few colors, and they provide those colors in shades. So antique button, there is a light, a medium dark, and a dark. And then same thing with their chatelaine range. There's a light, medium dark, dark, and then, so they really just have a few colors, but they're available in different, I don't want to, saturation levels, okay? All right, so that was Kathleen Dempsey and Eliza Duff Kirton. Now Elizabeth Poindexter. This is another piece that is available through Hobby House, and they have an online cart system, so you don't even have to call or email them. You can just head to Hobby House Needleworks website and check it out. Now, her last name here, Poindexter, you see it's S-T-R, but the chart itself does have an E there on the end, but that is not how it's charted, so I just stitched it as charted. This is stitched on 56 count Mason linen antique button light. And I used the called for, but actually I used soie surfine, I believe. Yes. Okay, my 12th finish is Jessie Anderson. This is out of the All Things Bright and Beautiful box. There is a booklet in that box that has 2 samplers in it. This one and another small sampler stitched by Jessie Anderson's daughter, Jessie Gay. So I have only stitched this Jessie's so far, and this is stitched on 56 count Down the Rabbit Hole by Tabby Cat Linens. That is a new linen color for this year. It is a reddish brown color, and I used the called for. I wonder if I put that on here. No, I didn't put it on here, but it's a bright red. I suspect it's either 664 or 681. And I used the 103 for the over 2 stitches, but there was a tiny little bit of over 1, which is right here. And then of course I added my signature here. And for those over 1 stitches, I used the soie surfine. You can stitch over 1 with 103s on, I'd say 46 count. I did that for Hannah Campbell. Wish I had known about the existence of soie surfine at that time. But the problem I found in stitching Hannah Campbell is that using soie 103 over 1 on 46 count, it's okay if it's just for letters or lines or a bunch of stitches that don't actually touch each other. But when you have dense stitching, like an animal or some other motif or something, it starts to build up and it gets hard to get your needle through and things start to get a little bit distorted. So if I have the coordinating color in soie surfine, I will use it for over 1. My next finish is Sarah Blackburn. This is a piece that was also included in the All Things Bright and Beautiful box, which is the most recent red box to be released by Hands Across the Sea Samplers. I did not use any of the called for materials though. I decided to do a Roxy Floss co-conversion. So I used Roxy Linen and Roxy Flosses. I used a 40 count Buttercup, which is just a beautiful pale, only very slightly mottled yellow. I mean, it is what it sounds like, Buttercup. And then I chose my own colors based on the 103s. I have a large stash of 103s, so I was able to pull all the called for 103s and then, you know, as best I could, choose Roxy Flosses off of the evertote.ca website. And ultimately, I ended up going with Scarecrow Steel Florida Pink of Quartz, Verd's the Word, Peas in a Pod, Chick, Yearly Bonus, and Yearly Bonus I used for both 226 and 241, those 103 colors. I substituted both of them with Yearly Bonus. I found that they were so close that it really didn't matter. And it was gonna make my life a lot easier to just use the same color. Smells Like Money, Strawberry Taffy, Monarch, Molly, Dragon Fruit, and Panther. And then I used, maybe I used this color, or I used even a different color just to put my signature here. You can see there's an A right here and a 25 right here. And even though on all of my other pieces, I have stitched my signature over one, because I wanted to use cottons for the whole thing, including my signature, I decided to just go with over two stitching in a color that matched the fabric so it wouldn't jump out. I love this frame. I love how it looks with the piece. I think it's a great match. My next finish, this is finish number 14. This is Dinah Elizabeth Disney. I stitched this on 56 count Creme Brûlée by Tabby Cat linens, and I used soie surfine in 2664. My favorite 103 is 664, and I know when I was stitching this I had quite a bit of the soie surfine equivalent, and I thought, well, this isn't an overly large sampler, so I know I can do it with less than one spool. And I felt it was important to use soie surfine for this one. As I discussed earlier, stitching four-sided stitches on 56 count, I find that using the soie surfine helps create definition in those four-sided stitches. Otherwise, I think they all just kind of blend together and look like little blobs. This one should be framed, actually. I was getting things together to go to my framer, and I held this one back, thinking that perhaps I would have it finished into a small pillow, but I think it deserves to be framed. So she'll just go with the next batch. Next, finish number 15. This is Maria Ward. I stitched this on 56 count Dirty Teacup by Needle and Flax, and I used, I'm sure I used the called for, and I used 103s. The stitching is a little bit bolder than it would be if I had used soie surfine. Dirty Teacup is one of my favorite neutrals. It's very nice. I love a good piece of creme brulee. The problem is creme brulee is kind of a crapshoot, and so you don't always know what you're gonna get. I like this dramatic but evenly modeled creme brulee. I'm not a big fan of the pieces that have very dark splotches here, very dark splotches here, but a lot of light empty areas. But this piece of fabric that I happened to get ages ago was particularly nice, and I've used it for several things. Yes, but Dirty Teacup is a good alternative if you like the look of creme brulee but don't want something as dramatic. You don't want something as dark. Yes, so that's Maria Ward. Okay, finish number 16. This is Rose Ada Featherstone. I started this in June, I believe, and I took it with me on an overseas trip. And I remember I stitched quite a bit of the roof and a little bit of the facade of the house on that trip. And then when I got home, I just blazed through it. It was so fun to stitch. It doesn't have a ton of colors. It uses a lot of this green. It's weird, but I really like it. Yeah. And the frame, now all of the frames I chose from my framer through photographs. So I didn't get to see anything in person, but I think everything turned out pretty well. This one is really shiny, and I'm not sure that I care for just how shiny it is, but I think the color, the brown to black, does work very well with this. Rose Ada Featherstone is an exclusive to Hobby House Needleworks. This came out a couple years ago, so I'm not sure if they have any copies of the chart left. You can go ahead and check though. But this is one that I do see every once in a while popping up on the Facebook groups, you know, to be resold, passed on, whatever. And so if you really like this and Hobby House doesn't have any copies left, you should be able to get your hands on it if you just keep an eye on the Facebook groups or eBay. I know that one of my friends got a copy on eBay and she didn't pay more than retail, so great deal. I stitched this on 46 count Marbled Khaki by XJew Design. I absolutely love XJew's fabrics, and I think the color of the fabric worked really well with this color palette. The called for might be marbled pointer. I do have a piece of that. It's a little bit, well, it's actually quite a bit darker, and I decided not to go with it. I'm happy with the marbled khaki. I think it looks great. Finish 17. I had two big ones right in a row. This is Elizabeth Dinsdale. Oh. Now, this is the piece that I was referring to when I said that, let's be careful here. Neila released December of 2024. She released a booklet that had a large sampler as well as a primer within the booklet. That's the Pear. This was really fun to stitch. The border is completely regular, except the top two corners are different than the bottom two corners. But I mean, the pattern throughout is regular. It was fun to stitch. These deer are so cool. And the trees are really cool. Now, I have since seen a very similar chart come out from the Wishing Thorn, and even though it is really similar, the verse is actually different, and there's a little bit something different here within the main body of the sampler. I want to stitch that one too, so I've been thinking about that one. Love this one. Use the called for, except I did not use the called for fabric. I don't even know what the called for fabric was, but I think it was a golden tan sort of color. And I chose to stitch it on 46 count beige gray by XJU Designs. And I did that because I thought the gray would make it look kind of like it's at dusk. And because there's a moon on it and a bunch of little things that presumably are supposed to be stars, I thought the gray would look really nice. This frame that I chose, it was something that my framer suggested during a previous batch, but I didn't select it for any of those pieces, but I told her that I really liked it, so keep it in mind for something in the future. And when she got Elizabeth Dinsdale and she sent me my options, this was one of the options that she suggested, I was like, yeah, let's go with that. It's perfect. And of course, when I went and picked everything up from her, I think it was just last week, she said that this was her favorite. This was her favorite sampler frame combination, and I love it too. I try to get all of my frames kind of in the brown family, as you may have noticed, but I'm not opposed to black, and I think the black, because it's not a really harsh black, and it's got that little bit of gold and a little bit of distressing. That's the word I was looking for. There's like a little bit of distressing detail around the frame. I think it looks really nice. Finish 18, Fanny Louisa Parker. This was an exclusive, but now it is available. You can purchase it through Hobby House Needleworks. I think it was an exclusive at one of their events. Someone gave this to me, so I was able to stitch it, and then I passed it on when I was done. I stitched this on 56 count Dirty Teacup with the called for 103, which is 523. If you have stitched, or at least if you are familiar with a lot of the Hands Across the Sea samplers charts, you'll know that 664 is really commonly used, as is 523. 523 though is more of a faded red. It's like an antique red. You'll see it's not super bright. Let's see, in comparison to Susanna, you can see the difference there. I mean, there's also a difference in fabric color, but you can see this one definitely looks a little bit softer. That is 523 on Fanny Louisa Parker, and as I say, this one is available now. My 19th finish. I really like how this one turned out. This is Harriet Goddard. I stitched Harriet on 56 count Shrekie's Tan by Needle Bling Design, and I used the called for 103s, except for this over one here and this 4-sided stitch here in the diamonds. I used soie surfine. I love those deer. Initially, I was thinking to stitch this on Down the Rabbit Hole, the same fabric that I used for Jessie Anderson, but then I ended up getting a piece of this Shrekie's Tan, and I thought it worked so well, and it really does. I think the reds look really vivid on it. It's very nice. You'll notice the right and left borders are just half cross stitches. They're not full cross stitches, but the top border and the bottom border are full crosses. And that is how Harriet stitched it. So that's how I stitched it. I love this frame. I think it looks great. And I've already got this one hung up because there is a weird little wall between two doors in my living room. One of the doors leads to my bedroom and one of the doors leads upstairs. And the living room is painted blue. And so hanging it there, it fits perfectly in that little space, but also the blue of the wall really pulls out the blue in Harriet's piece here. Finish 20. This is Emma Hubbard. If you watched my latest Flosstube episode, you will have seen Emma here as well as her brother's sampler. And I'll get to that in just a little bit. But I finished Emma's first. This is stitched on 46 count Casterbridge by Tabby Cat linens with the called for 103s, as is her brother's sampler. Now, when Faye finished this, she added the pin, but when I was tidying up not too long ago, I found this little charm on this bulb pin. This is something that was attached to something that I got in Swindon at Mrs. Parkman's Academy of Needlework. And I thought, well, that looks cute there. We'll just put that there. Finish 21 is Fanny Hussey. And I know all you Brits think this is a particularly funny name. This chart was given to me by a friend that I got to meet in person at Swindon, actually. Thank you so much. I stitched this one very quickly, and I used 56 count Creme Brûlée, and you'll see it looks a lot like, oh, it's buried. Looks a lot like Dinah Disney's because I am still working off of that same piece of fabric. I think I must have gotten a half a yard of 56, which is a lot of fabric. Half a yard of 56. Yes, and I used the called for, which is $4.99. Or at any rate, I used $4.99. I'm sure it would have been the called for. I made a couple small mistakes in this, but couldn't even tell you what they are anymore. So I guess it really doesn't matter. But very cute. And then Faye added a little pocket on the back. Love that finish. Number 22. I showed this one on my last Flosstube as well. And I had to tell you all that it was from a PDF that people who purchased the 2026 Hands Across the Sea Samplers calendar received, but there was, I guess, such a demand for it that Neila has now made this PDF available for purchase. Just head to the Hands Across the Sea Samplers website and you'll be able to see it in the PDF section. Also, if you are in the Friends of Hands Across the Sea Samplers Facebook group, you will have seen an announcement about this. I stitched this on 56 count, but it's a mystery linen. I got this fabric as well as 3 others in just a pack of random cuts of 56 from Michelle of Tabby Cat when I saw her in Swindon, actually. It's a very, very light pink, and I think the red of the silk just pops nicely on it. Finish 23 now is Martin Noah Hubbard. And this is stitched just the same as his sisters on 46 count Casterbridge by Tabby Cat with a called for 103s. And you'll notice it's finished the same way. I requested that Faye do that. I wanted them to be matchy-matchy. Finish 24, we are nearing the end. Finish 24 is a freebie. And if you are, seriously, if you are not in the Friends of Hands Across the Sea Samplers Facebook group and you have a Facebook account, just go ahead and join that group because Neila is always posting information, tips, whatever it may be, but she also provides some free charts throughout the year, and it's really nice. This one has a lot of Smyrna crosses in it, so I also used this to record a Stitch With Me video that was all about Smyrna crosses. I used Soie d'Alger in 2935 on 40 count mystery linen from Tabby Cat. Kind of looks like Creme Brûlée, kind of looks like Ashley Down. Who knows what it was supposed to be? I don't care, it's pretty. So I used that. I wish I had, I don't know what I was thinking here. If I had stitched this a little closer this way, because I knew I was gonna have this finished to do a pillow, but if I had stitched this a little closer to the edge, then I probably would have had enough to stitch another small sampler over on that side, but alas, I did not. Oh well. My very last finish, my very last hats finish, and I'm sure it'll be my last finish of the year too. My last hats finish of 2025 is Hanora Maxwell. Now, Hanora is not yet available for purchase. I don't know if she will be released. It does seem, though, that eventually everything's getting released, although Neila has said definitively that all of the charts that are included in her red boxes will not be released again. But it does seem that the pieces that she gives to attendees of retreats, uses as, you know, event projects, whatever it may be, it does seem like those pieces eventually get released for general purchase. So if you like this one and you're interested in it, be patient. I suspect it will be available. And if you can't be patient, then again, ask friends, check the secondary market. The interesting thing about Hanora here is that there are actually two versions included in the little booklet. It is a ring-bound booklet, and the first version is the version that I stitched, which has this ampersand done in running stitch and her name and the date in over 1 cross stitches. There is a second version within the booklet that puts everything into over 2 crosses. So it's available, or you can stitch it on Ada, you can stitch it on anything. Or, I mean, if you're stitching on linen and you just don't want to stitch over 1, then you have that option. I stitched this on 56 count dirty teacup with the called for 103s, except of course I used soie surfine noir for the black of her name and the date. But that is it. That was a lot. That was a lot. I got a lot of stitching done this year. I'm very thankful for all the stitching time that I am afforded. I know I'm very lucky. And it's wonderful to look back on a year and see all the things that I was able to accomplish. I did have some other finishes as well, other small pieces by other designers, but there's one big piece that I finished. It's not a Hands Across the Sea samplers chart, but I'm going to show it here because it deserves absolutely honorable mention. And it leads into more talk about the Blessing sampler. Let me go get it. Can you guys guess what it is? It's big. Okay. This is Eliza Townsend. Now, some of you will recognize the frame. This is the same frame that was used on Fanny Wilson. I had Fanny Wilson framed several months ago, and where she hangs in the Floss Palace here, I get a good look at her when I'm sitting in this chair. And there were several days that I was just plugging along on Eliza Townsend here, and I kept looking up at Fanny Wilson thinking that frame would look really good on this piece. And so when I sent off my batch of items to Lisa, my framer, and she went through everything, she was looking through options and stuff. I said, well, I sent her a picture of Fanny Wilson. I said, do you still have this molding in stock, or are you still able to get it? Because I think it would look really good with Eliza Townsend. And she sent me a mock-up and said, looks great. And I said, okay, well, we'll go with that. Yeah. Everything else, I believe I picked new moldings, but this one, I thought the dark frame with the little bit of color, just a little bit of color on the edge would work well with Eliza. Now I should tell you that Eliza is widely available. She is by Cross Stitch Antiques. I made a few small modifications. I changed one color. I should say I added one color. And then I had to kind of do some finagling to get both of these vases here with all of their flowers to fit with the verse. The original sampler by Eliza Townsend is stitched on an unevenly woven piece of cloth. And so when Kathleen Littleton of Cross Stitch Antiques was charting this, she found that on even cloth, there was no way to get everything to sit just as Eliza had it. So she made some changes of her own and then made some suggestions in the instructions, but I did my own math and made everything work. I also made some changes a little bit to the I made a few small changes to make everything fit nicely for me. So this is not a perfect reproduction. It's not, but I'm so happy with it. I'm glad that she's done. I'm glad that she's framed. And I actually have plans to find a spot in the house and put her up next to Neilta Van Buren, because for some reason, the two of them just look really good together. So when I find the perfect place for them and finally get them on the wall, I will share a photo. But let me give you a close-up of Eliza. And I used Overa Soie 103s for this. I used the called for, but then I added in a pink for the flowers here. You see the border flowers are done in two different pinks. Originally they're done in a pink and then a grayish green that is found throughout the sampler, but I wanted all of my border flowers to be pink, so I just added in a complementary color. And then I used the soie surfine for the over one words, as well as those birds there that are above the house. And then you can see that there is an A and a 25 here surrounding the birds. I looked for a place to put my signature, my full signature, somewhere that wouldn't stand out, but this sampler looks symmetrical. It is symmetrical, and I thought, unless I put it like right here or managed to hide it using a silk that matches the linen, then I wasn't, it wasn't gonna work. But ultimately, I think what I came up with works just fine, because the A and the 25 don't jump out too badly since you've already got those birds there. But I love this piece. The only thing I wish I would have done when sending this off to the framer was to ask Lisa to bring the bottom frame up to the grass. I don't think it's a problem for it to be framed as is, but because the border stretches just around 3 sides, I think it would be neat to have the grass meet the frame. I am working on another large sampler that has 3-sided border like this one and then grass at the bottom. So you guys help me remember when I finally finish that one and send it off to the framer, that's what I want. But so happy with her. She looks great. And I should tell you, for all of these framed pieces, I chose museum glass. It is an additional cost. It costs more than, certainly costs more than no glass, it costs more than the basic glass, but I'm 37. I hope to be around a while, and I don't want to see these things fade. So if I can do a little bit more to protect them, that's what I'm going to do. And I'm particularly fortunate that my two young boys, seem to have an interest in holding on to these things after I'm gone. I mean, there are a couple pieces, not everything, but there are a couple pieces that have been claimed, I get that when you're dead. Okay. So I want them to be well preserved. I want them to be taken care of if possible. Okay, so I wanted to show Eliza Townsend because it's big and beautiful and it's done and it's framed and I'm so excited. And I even sent a photo to Kathleen and said, thank you, look at this. Yay me. But I'm thinking about my blessing sampler for next year. And I have chosen this. I've chosen another Cross Stitch Antiques. This is something that Kathleen gave us at Swindon. And it's a small little sampler. It's only 96 by 147. So if I did the math right, on 56 count, because yes, I'm gonna stitch it on 56 count. On 56 count, it'll be something like 3.5 by 5.5. I love the colors. I got to see this antique in Swindon, but then I also got to see Kathleen's stitched reproduction, which was just lovely. And it only calls for 3 colors. And I suspect I have 3 colors, 6 colors. It calls for 6 colors. And I suspect I have all 6 of those colors in my stash. And if not, I can order them. This is, let's see, it's a National Female Model School sampler from Kildare Place, Dublin, and it's from about 1820, so 200 years ago. I just think this will make a great blessing sampler. I don't want something overly large. I know that I could stitch something like another rose Ada Featherstone. I could stitch that in a month, but only if that's all I work on within a month. So it's my preference to choose something smaller that I can finish in about a week or so that allows me some flexibility throughout the rest of January, because in January, I'm going to Sampler Symposium. I did promise you guys that I was going to tell you about my 2026 plans. I'm not going to do that today because I don't have my calendar in front of me, and also because I am considering adding one more thing to my calendar, because why not? Why not? Okay. So that is my blessing sampler. And another upcoming start that I have planned is a Christmas Eve start. The last couple years I have chosen a red sampler to start on Christmas Eve. The first one of these that I did a couple years ago, that's actually finished. My Christmas Eve start from last year, not finished, nowhere near finished. This year I have selected Hannah and Ellen Wilkinson. I was going through my red samplers that I have in stash, and while this one isn't necessarily the most exciting stylistically, I started to read the story and it really got to me. So I decided to pick up Ellen and Hannah Wilkinson here. I want to make sure I'm getting the name right. Yes, 1835 to 1841, and there is a reason why there is such a great amount of time between the start and the finish of this. There is quite a bit of over one, so I am going to stitch it on 46 count Pemberley by Swan Bay Fabrics, and I have the 103 and soie surfine in 523 all ready to go. This is the called for color, and I think it'll look beautiful on Pemberley. The called for fabric is something a bit darker. I do believe it is an XJU. Yes, it's marbled pointer, which we talked about earlier. I'm not going to go with that. I do have a piece of that, but I like the Pemberley for this piece. So I will be starting that on Christmas Eve. And I say that like that's in the future because I am actually recording, though I am posting this on Christmas Eve, I'm recording it a couple days earlier because for many of us, the lead up to the holidays is very busy. So I need to get this in while I can. And we had some good light today, so decided to record today. Finally, the last thing I want to say to you guys is thank you. Thank you so much for all the wonderful support and encouragement I've received over the last couple years, especially this year. I have seen a lot of growth in my channel. I have picked up a lot of subscribers, and I know that is not just due to me. I have gotten some wonderful shout outs from other Flosstubers, and it's been really wonderful to see the numbers grow, but also to feel that I am more involved in this community. It's not necessarily just about the numbers, although that is a way to quantify it. But I feel that I have connected more this year with stitchers than I had in the previous time being on YouTube. So I think 2025 has been a really good stitching year for me. It's been a really great year for connecting with friends and making new stitchy friends, and I'm really looking forward to 2026. So hug your loved ones, be thankful for what you have. Leave me a comment or a question if you have any. If you do have any comments, go ahead and leave them here, or you can find me on Instagram at Stitch Stitch Bead. I will also leave my email address in the drop-down box below. Another thing, if you have questions about anything that I've shown on this video or any other video, I would encourage you please to check the drop-down box below. the actual video because I do spend quite a bit of time. I'm not perfect. Sometimes I miss things, but I do spend quite a bit of time putting information in there so that you guys have, you know, everything that you might want. So I will talk to you guys in the new year, 2026. Happy stitching.